right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Thank you for joining us. Another episode of Catching Up with Jacob. We're getting into the end of the year. So the last few catching ups for the year, but he's here with us. Jacob Prass. Jacob, how you doing this morning? Well, not this morning here, this morning somewhere in the world, but good evening to you.
Blessings in Jesus. Wonderful to be with you, even though we're in a very fallen world. And I'm beginning to understand more and more the plea of the martyred saints in Revelation chapter 6. How much longer, O Lord? The world is becoming so wicked by the day, in every phase of society, every phase of government, every phase of religion, every phase of everything, that I believe the true saints of God are going to be focused more and more on the return of Jesus. The faithful church is going to be defined by a longing for his return, because it's the only thing going to stop the evil. We already have that to some degree where the church is persecuted. They long for Jesus to come in countries where the church is persecuted more than they do in the West. But I think the faithful believers in the West are going to be more and more defined by a desire to see the Lord return because of the wickedness.
Absolutely. And I agree. You know what, Jacob, we hear a lot from parents, hear a lot from grandparents, not so much for themselves, but for their children. They can't even raise their children up if you live in the Western world, you can't raise up your children anymore in a godly way because there's so much ungodliness that comes in. And obviously, if you live in a persecuted country, that's a different problem. And the Western problem is a different problem that they face there. But what would be your advice in terms of raising kids in an ungodly world, raising grandkids? You have a grandson. I have children.
There was a reason that Jesus told the women of Jerusalem to weep for their children. And there's a reason in the Olivet Discourse, although that in large part applies to 70 AD, where Jesus warned about those who were nursing at that time. Can you imagine a world, and it doesn't take a lot of imagination, where a teacher is going to indoctrinate children at the age of 5 and 6 about homosexuality and lesbianism, and a little girl or a little boy is going to say, my mommy told me I was born a girl and God made me a girl. And if you're born a girl, you have to be a girl. And if you're born a boy, you have to be a boy. And that teacher's going to report it to the principal. The principal's going to call social services. Social services are going to call the police, and they're going to try to get a court order to take the children away from the parents. That will happen if they get their way. And they are going to get their way, certainly, in states like California and New York first. It will come if they have their way. The only thing that can stop it is the hand of Jesus. That is how wicked it's become.
Yeah, as a parent, as a grandparent, obviously the concern is there. And boy, we need to teach our children scripture. We need to teach our children to pray.
The importance of having Christian schools and homeschooling cannot be overemphasized.
Yeah, absolutely. And so if parents can get them into homeschool or to Christian schools, support your local Christian schools, support your local home groups, homeschool groups. They're so important. We've been a part of it for a long time. And boy, there's not a bigger emphasis today.
They are going to dictate curriculums, saying that even homeschooling must have this, 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 and this. The most you're going to be able to do, most likely, legally, is the following. What Christian schools have done where there's a dictated curriculum concerning evolution, where you have to teach the evolution as a theory, but then you have to teach creationism as an alternate theory. And you can show the scientific problems with, Well, the same thing about sexual orientation and sexual identity, but it can only be done through private schools, church schools, home schools. The state schools are given over to Satan completely. We have to pray that they get destroyed. Remember, the school system is socioeconomically outdated anyway. It was made for a manufacturing economy where the teacher was the foreman to prepare the children to work on an assembly line. That's what it was there for, to make robots of a technocracy and a manufacturing age. That is over. Most upstart companies now are cottage industries. More and more work is done from home, therefore more education should be done from home. Those schools are only there for purposes of social political engineering and to serve the interests of the corrupt teachers unions. Not good teachers, bad teachers. That's the only reason it exists. This wicked Weingarten woman. It's only there for the teachers unions, and it's there for the globalist conditioning of children. That's what the schools are for. They're not there for education anymore. If you want your kid to be educated, pull them out of a state school, of a public school.
Yeah, and you remember that that interview from MSNBC, Jacob, where they said we have to get rid of this notion that kids belong to their parents. They belong to all the community. And even Hillary was saying that before. It takes a village to raise children. It's the same Marxist leftist idea that there's no individual responsibility for your children as a parent. It has to be the state, the nanny state come in. Well, that's being played out in the school systems. And you see how some of the teachers, at least in the States, a lot of teachers union are extremely leftist, extremely Marxist, extremely anti.
Yes, and a political campaign fund for the corrupt Democratic Party.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, I wanted to welcome everyone. Jacob's already in high gear. I can already see this is going to be a really good catching up. Jacob's already warmed up, and we haven't even hit the 5-minute mark. But I want to welcome everyone. And watching us on YouTube, watching us on Vimeo, watching us on RTN, watching us on Moriel.tv, MorielTV.org. What else we got, Jay? We got Facebook, we got Rumble,
Vimeo, and I believe we also have Telegram.
Telegram. Yeah, so we welcome everybody there, and we would like to let you know that we will be having our backstage program. Will be immediately following Catching Up. It's part of Catching Up, but just the things we cannot say. We got some videos on what they're trying to do with our children with Satanism. Some videos are going to be there, and then we're going to talk about the Twitter dump file number 2 and the progression toward the abolition of preaching the gospel. And we'll talk about those things on Backstage, but we can only do Backstage on certain platforms: Moriel.tv, Vimeo, Rumble, and Telegram. I believe those are ones, right? And thank you, Jay. I want to welcome Jay. Did so well last time we had him on. And thank you for being with us, brother. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and Davey and Jonah. So a lot of people that put together a lot of effort to get this done. I know Jacob and I are the face, but there's a lot of believers in the background working things together. And ultimately the Lord working things together for good. Jay, I had a question actually when Jacob brought it up. You're single, right? And you don't have any children. And I just wanted to know, from your perspective, your friends and people that you know that are single and are not married and don't have children, what's their perspective when you see the world as it is and unfolding against children and the attack on children? What is the common thing that you hear from your peers and colleagues when they see this in a perspective of marriage and having children and having a family, when they see this onslaught of evil?
When they see this onslaught, they're discouraged to even attempt to have a family. They're discouraged to even look for a partner. It's basically, why would you set yourself up to eventually have heartbreak? Because you're right, the world and our society wants to take away your children. At a very young age, they want to indoctrinate them, and if you don't go with the program, they'll take them. So yeah, it's horribly discouraging to see this. It's for a single guy, it's like, I wonder why I even bothered having that dream.
Oh man. Jacob, you grew up in the 60s and people thought at some point through the 70s and 80s it was the end. Jesus was coming, Israel's back in the land. Was it ever a generation where they thought they would forego having children and not wanting to get into marriage because of how bad the world would become?
Yes, you saw that repeatedly multiple times with the Jehovah's Witness cult.
Okay.
They told people not to marry and so forth. You had a phenomena in 999 and the years leading up to it with Pope Sylvester, who said that was the end of the millennium. So the answer is yes, there are historical precedents for that kind of thing.
Interesting. Yeah. And obviously, not to let the cat out of the bag, but why is this time different? It's part
Yes.
of what we're going to be working on next year. So
Amen.
want to remind everyone that you can also listen to Jacob. So it's one thing of watching Jacob, but listen to Jacob. I know he's a good looking guy. People want to see him, but also we want to listen to him as well. And you can catch him on podcasts and through Buzzsprouts. Yeah. Through Buzzsprouts, you can find many platforms. He's on iTunes. He's on Google Podcasts. He's on Amazon. He is on Spotify. And you can find those on the Memorial website. You can go to the memorial.tv as well, memorial.org, memorial.tv. Find the podcast, and you will be connected to all the different messages. We have Sandy, yours truly, catching up is there. Some of Jacob's teaching is there weekly. So we have a full schedule for the month. So December's almost over. January will come out soon. And so we got more things coming up for you guys. And you can share the podcast. You can send them to your friends, to your enemies, and maybe they'll learn something. And that's always a good thing to spread the gospel. Jacob, let's catch up. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Jacob, not sure if we should celebrate this, but Zelensky won Times Magazine Man of the Year. Let's not get too excited about that, right? Because many other men and women have won this that we don't really want to talk about, like Hitler, like Stalin, like Greta Thunberg, like the Prime Minister of Germany, Merkel, Charles Lindbergh. Infamous people have won Time Magazine Man of the Year, but he also won Sexiest Man of the Year, and that's an interesting thing to do that in the middle of a war, which has really risen up to a new crescendo. Donetsk has been attacked by Ukrainian drones and missiles into the Donetsk Republic, which has been annexed by Russia. Putin is threatening nuclear war again. So in the middle of this, he wins Sexiest Man of the Year, Time Magazine Man of the Year. The war is rising. What a time. What are we looking at here?
Well, first of all, we're looking at a dying magazine. Newsweek is just gone. And the circulation of Time has decreased so much, it really doesn't matter anymore as a publication. It's of no significance anymore in the global market. It is not a media shaper or a popular culture shaper anymore. It just doesn't have enough circulation. Not enough people care about it or read about it. It features on the internet or just technically superior to anything a magazine like Time could produce anyway. Not only that, but no sooner does the news of the week come out in Time that the news is changed by the time the magazine comes out. Only internet can keep up with that. A magazine can't. So Time magazine is irrelevant. And therefore anything it publishes is largely irrelevant now. I wouldn't make too much out of it. But as you rightly point out, some of the most notorious villains in modern history have been on the cover of Time as the Man of the Year. Not only positive people, but many negative people. So my attitude towards Time is, who cares? I ignore it, and I think most people ignore it. It doesn't really matter anymore.
What about the war, though? I mean, it's just like an odd timing again. In the middle of a war, Donetsk gets hit. Putin raises up the ante now because they're saying, well, they're using NATO proxy forces to attack now an independent republic, because it's called the Republic of Donetsk. And Moscow keeps ordering more drones to counteract some of the attacks. So it just seems like the war is unending. There's no, he says, no more negotiations. There's no off ramp. Are we looking at it?
Right from the beginning, it's been a proxy war. The Ukrainians and the Russians, just looking at the two supposed combatant nations, neither one of them have done well. They have both been battered substantially. Neither one have done well out of this war. Finland has joined NATO. NATO has moved further to the east than Putin ever wanted. As a result, his economy, although not undermined, it has in certain sectors been damaged. 750,000 middle-class professional people, young men leaving the country. He's not doing well. And it's also a humiliating prospect for Russia. So he's not done well. But the Ukrainians have not done well either. They've lost perhaps 100,000 people or more. Nobody actually knows. What Putin has done has retrenched his troops to the Dnieper River and is basically dismantling the infrastructure, the utilities, the power grid of the country. That's what he's doing. Muriel has a rescue mission, or I shouldn't call it that, a refugee assistance mission to the Ukraine, so we run out of Poland. And we've just, from Britain, sent over another 250 stoves that are heaters. They burn wood. They burn wood, and you can cook on them. We just sent over another 250 because the people are shivering. They don't have heat. They don't have public utilities. They have electricity maybe 2 hours a day.
Yeah,
they're suffering terribly. The Ukraine is not winning the war. The Ukraine is being beaten to a pulp. Russia got itself into something it would have been better that it had not gotten itself into. So neither side is doing well. Not only that, when the ground gets cold and these conscriptees into the Russian army are integrated into the mainstream Russian forces, you can very well expect a full-scale Russian invasion that can only be stopped by NATO troops entering into Ukraine. But there is no mandate for entering Ukraine. It will be like the war crimes of Clinton, Javier Solano, Tony Blair, and Antonio particularly, and Wesley Clark when they bombed the Serbs. NATO can only attack a country that attacked a NATO country. Well, you had these illegal acts by Clinton and Blair already, and by Solano and by Wesley Clark already. Well, the precedent was set then. Now it'll be another illegal act to have NATO troops fighting in Ukraine. But they're already NATO surrogates. Western intelligence agencies and NATO are using mercenaries. The Ukrainians are not scoring all those hits and kills on the Russian hardware and ordnance. It's being done by people who are trained by the American CIA, by British MI6, by British military intelligence, and so forth. They're using mercenaries. They're using all kinds of mercenaries. By some reports, NATO is even using Islamic mercenaries. It is not the Ukrainians gaining that victory. It is a proxy war by NATO. The only way out is something negotiated. Now, Putin is the villain. He's a bad man. Zelensky is not a good man. It's just that he's the lesser of two evils. Putin is a bad man, okay? But he's got himself into something. You need to offer him a way out. Now, I'm not suggesting you give him up Donetsk and these other regions, but you can give some kind of terms, at least for a ceasefire. At least get a ceasefire. Look, Putin is not winning, but either is the Ukraine. And in the long term, Ukraine is paying a higher price than Putin. Not only that, up until now, up until the 5th of December, Putin's economy has not been hurt all that badly as the Western media has reported. It's been hurt, but not nearly all that badly. He's been selling, howbeit at a discounted price, the oil to India and to Russia, and to China, rather. And also, he continued selling to Europe, and he will still sell to Hungary and I think Austria. His economy is not undermined to the degree the Western media and the American government is trying to make out. Damaged, yes. Hurt, yes. But undermined, no, it has not been. It has not been. People in Russia are paying something of a price, but nothing like the price the people in the Ukraine are paying. Nothing. Nothing. We are not being told the truth by the mainstream media or by the American or British government. And yes, it is a proxy war by NATO. The Ukrainians are not scoring those hits. It is NATO mercenaries.
No, I agree. Now, let's keep talking about Russia, because something of our government here in the States, Biden, recently just made in my opinion, a terrible terrible deal. And Brittany Griner, a lesbian basketball player who was detained by Russia because of drug charges coming into the country. She's been traded. Basically, her release was traded for, of all people, Victor Bout, which is called the Merchant of Death, an arms dealer. And to my surprise, Marine Paul Whelan was not part of that negotiation, never was part of the negotiation by the Biden administration. Does this surprise you, Jacob, that he did this?
Biden is a man with no scruples and no morals whatsoever anyway. And on top of that, he's half senile. So no, it doesn't surprise me. You've got Paul Whelan, a former Marine, being held probably illegally by Russia for espionage as a political pawn. Okay. But instead, Biden chose to fight for the freedom and a swap of this notorious arms dealer who supplied radical Islamic terror aimed at killing Americans. And the trouble we went through to get him deported from Thailand.
Yeah.
You either keep someone like that in prison or you swamp him for a Gary Powers type swap. For somebody
exactly.
Instead, Biden, because of Harris, takes someone only because she is a Black lesbian with a wife, only because she's a Black lesbian, and gives her priority over a patriot.
Yeah.
Patriot be damned. The Black lesbian who is a spout of anti-Americanism.
Yes.
She's vocally anti-American, Black lesbian. Her freedom is more important than a patriot. So we give away a dangerous arms dealer who's essentially somebody who equips terror.
Yeah.
For her.
A 1-for-1.
And you see Don Lemon and you see the
Vance. Yeah.
Yeah, you see what they're making it a race and a racial issue and a LGBTQ issue and all this kind of that. Those are their priorities. It's the same old story.
Yeah, I watched the CNN exchange with Don Lemon, and they were just gloating that a Black lesbian is going to be released, a 1-for-1 with the terrible criminal and terrorist, and a 1-for-1 is that's going to be the culmination of American history. She's going to come kiss her wife on the tarmac, and it's going to be great. We're going to tell the world who we're all about. Well, on the other hand,
what it's going to be all about is Romans chapter 1.
Oh, yeah. Even some top Democrats have blasted Biden over this. Even Senator Bob Menendez blasted the Biden over this. It's not going so well, but I don't think they care because they abandoned Americans in Afghanistan. I don't think abandoning another patriot would really mean anything to them.
Nothing would mean absolutely nothing to Biden or Joe Obama, as he should be called.
Yeah.
And even less to Harris.
You know, Jacob, had Brittany Griner been a conservative or a Bible-believing Christian, you think she would have been part of that negotiation?
Absolutely not.
Yeah, I figure that. I sensed that from the beginning, but again, it's one of those things where, you know, it's publicity, it's trying to undermine Americanism and patriotism. Jacob, but have you seen we're talking about war. What about the war within the borders of different countries? We're talking about US, the UK, France. Here in America, we've seen some of the videos that you and I have seen from Philadelphia. Armed guards with AR-15s and 9mm and Uzis and all that, guarding gas stations, convenience stores. In Philadelphia, of all, Philadelphia's gone crazy, Kensington Street especially. In places in New York, they're hiring these almost mercenary type security guards. They're not the same Securitas security guards that waves you in and out of whatever situation you may be in. They're not patrolling anything. They literally are armed to the teeth, guarding these stores, guarding the cities, because police, it's helpless, hapless, whatever you want to call them. This is South American style living now in the streets of New York, Philadelphia, LA.
Of course. Well, first of all, the people who live in those cities who vote Democrat don't deserve any better. They got what they voted for. They don't deserve any better. If you're a liberal woman in San Francisco on your way to work and you step through a puddle of urine, but you have no right to complain about it. No right whatsoever. That's what you voted for. That's what you voted for. Now, when you have a defunding of the police, when you have prosecutors who won't prosecute criminals, what do people do? They form vigilantes and militia groups to protect themselves because government won't protect them. You think Black lives don't matter now? Just wait. These people guarding these petrol stations, filling stations, they're going to kill a lot of Blacks.
Yeah, that's it. That's the amazing thing. These things are in areas, basically Hispanic, Black, minority communities.
Yep.
And that's where the crime is. That's where the violence is. And now convenience stores are saying, we're not going to trust the police anymore. We're going to have to arm ourselves. We're going to have to do ourselves.
That's right.
And boy, is it going to spark something. It just going to take one person to be shot on site or something. And it's just going to be a violent turnout. And
But Black Lives Matter and defund the police has resulted in more Blacks being murdered, mainly by other Blacks. That's what has happened. It has caused more people, more minorities, especially Blacks, to be murdered by other Blacks. So Black lives don't matter to Black Lives Matter. Defund the police only gets more Black people, particularly killed. Others as well, but particularly the people they espouse themselves as being out to help, or whose cause they are trying to advance. Now it's going to get worse. People will defend themselves. They will have no choice if the government and police will not defend them because their hands are tied politically. But this all is bound up with what Jesus said. Lawlessness will increase.
That's
when
exactly
lawlessness increases, people make a law unto themselves.
Yeah. You know, in the time of Noah, the Bible tells us there was violence on the earth, Genesis 6. And, and I think about what Jesus said, it'll be just like the days of Noah, it'll be violence on the earth, just as much as the Nephilim, things that happen with humanity. Jacob, I mean, you mentioned Black Lives Matters don't matter to Black Lives Matters. I mean, they're buying up mansions and houses from, I guess, from, you know, evangelist TV personalities like Sean Bolts are buying huge homes up in Topanga Canyon. And yet Black communities end up getting shot, end up getting arrested, end up getting in violent acts because their cities have absolutely been destroyed by their own policies. Defund the police, defund the police.
That's what they voted for. That's what they got. Again, they have no right to complain.
Yeah.
I think it's a tragedy.
Yeah.
When I see these children in Chicago getting shot on their way to school, Black children, I think it's a human tragedy, but it's what their parents voted for.
Yeah. Black Christians have come out against Black Lives Matters, pastors and teachers.
Of course.
This is ridiculous. They're buying up homes up in California. They don't care about children in Chicago or Baltimore.
Topanga Canyon. That's where that Clarice Colors lives, Topanga Canyon.
Yeah.
You couldn't buy a shack in Topanga Canyon for less than $1 million.
At least $1 million. Now, these flash mobs, Walmart CEO, Target CEO, Best Buy CEO, they've all condemned it and come out. Even the Walmart CEO said this is organized retail crime. They take the stuff, they loot the stores. You and I watch videos, Apple stores, clothing stores, from Washington to New York to LA to your native New York to my, you know, here in Southern California. And they're saying, look, we're gonna close stores and raise prices because we just can't compete. $100 billion loss, $100 billion loss per year. It's costing retailers this ridiculous things. You can go in there, take the stuff. No one does anything. No one calls the cops. They take stuff, Apple computers, Apple phones, clothing, and they just sell it on the black market.
In San Francisco, they wouldn't prosecute you unless the amount you stole is above $900. This is just inviting crime. It's pro-crime. You've got Soros funding the election campaigns of people like Krasner in Philadelphia and Bragg in New York.
Yeah.
That man is actually trying to promote crime.
Yeah. Chicago got rid of their bail. No cash bail is no longer. You can basically, you're free to go. They can't hold you. You're free to go. They can't hold you on bail in Chicago. California is reducing prison population, letting prisoners go.
Yep.
And then they can't imagine that their crimes going up, and they don't know why.
If that's what you voted for, you have no right to complain. It's the decent people in Illinois and California and New York I'm concerned for,
Yeah.
and Pennsylvania.
Yeah. I mean, it's organized crime, but I guess small businesses get hit the hardest because of what Amazon and all these other stores may not, they just go online.
It's like intentional economic suicide.
Yeah. Jacob, do you think in some way, and I'm thinking nefariously here, so I'm thinking nefariously, I'll just start with that a lot of this is to promote somehow to track digital payments, somehow to track digital stuff. You have to pay through digital payments now. You can't go to the store anymore and use cash. You have to go digital, and therefore you're going to be tracked by the IRS. Part of me thinks in a lot of ways it combines. I'm not saying it's purposely done in that way, but it results into that, and to funnel people into digital payments.
That is a part of it. They want to integrate all of this into digital currency, social credit scoring, and so forth. That ultimately is definitely a component of what's happening. But you have to understand it within the context of the greater scheme. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist. It's not a conspiracy anymore. It's just out there. They are trying to initiate a neo-feudalism.
Yeah.
You can't buy things anymore because of the looting. So therefore you have to buy them from Amazon online. And you have to use a card to buy it that we can track and we can score you. You'll have to use a digital currency, or you'll have to use some mechanism that we approve of to purchase something. That's the only way to do it. You'll have to have only online shopping for anything other than staples or minor commodities. You'll have to do all shopping online. Well, who's going to benefit from that? Well, people like Bezos will benefit. Well, Wells Fargo Bank will benefit. Well, FedEx will benefit. Yeah. I mean, we know who is going to benefit from it. They're just trying to reshape the economy by crashing the old one.
Yeah, absolutely. Jay, you live near LA. I mean, you're not in LA, but you live near LA. Have you seen some of this stuff? I mean, we're not making stuff up. I mean, it's thousands and thousands of videos. We probably could do a whole show on just how many videos are out there of looting, organized retail crime. Have you seen anything like that in your area?
I have not seen it personally, but I can tell you just from last night, there was a big story on the local news for people that are bank stalking. And basically it's two people working in tandem. One person on the inside of the bank watches who's withdrawing large amounts of cash. Ooh. And then they have people that are, they text person coming out going with this bag has this much money, and they're met by people right there to grab the cash. And what is the story about? It's about, you can't carry cash anymore. It's not safe.
Oh, yeah.
But this is why we need digital currency. I mean, the anchors were actually saying this.
Oh, man. I remember an anchor saying, this is why we need surveillance, because on the other, another side of the coin, this is why we need surveillance. We need cameras everywhere because the violence is just getting too out of hand. We need to apprehend people. So now you're playing into the hand of tracking, surveillance, and digital currency out of something that it shouldn't be happening. It wasn't like this before, but they just have allowed violence to be unleashed.
Yes,
especially in the cities like that. So, Jacob, have you seen this? New York, Hochul doesn't want to let its citizens buy arms or body armor. It's impossible to get a gun. So is Canada now, but at least in the States, which you have a Second Amendment, I guess it doesn't matter in Hochul's world in New York.
She is a wicked, wicked woman. I wish her nothing but the judgment of Christ for a number of reasons. And I hope it's swift and merciless, but she's only one of many. To deprive people of body armor, not only can you not have the right to defend yourself from an armed but you can't even have the right to defend yourself if somebody shoots at you. This is an outrage. This is an outrage.
Many of the
But if you voted for her, you should be the first. Justice demands you should be the first one who gets shot.
You've
I'm
seen
not
the
wishing it
violence.
on you. I'm just saying it's going to happen, and I hope it happens to you instead of to somebody who didn't vote for her.
Violence that's coming across the border. It's not only true in the States, it's true of England, it's true of France, true of Germany. It's Biden here will not visit the border.
Of course
Even though
not.
He's in Arizona visiting a plant that manufactures semiconductor chips, because I guess that's the new trend now, trying to open up chips, because obviously the problem with Taiwan and China. But he's there. He's only within hours, not even hours, just a couple, maybe an hour away from the border. But he says he's not going to go through the nacho chip. He says the nano chip, he doesn't know what he's talking about. And he's just not going to visit it.
No, well, first of all, probably the Secret Service doesn't want him to. It's too dangerous.
Rightly so. Have you heard cinema? Speaking of Arizona,
Yes.
cinema flipped to the independent.
She's becoming an independent. She's not becoming a Republican or a conservative, but an independent. But if she caucuses with the Democrats, it'll probably mean very little. Most of the time. Most of the time. It has been suggested that it will strengthen the hand of Manchin on a few points. Look, I'm glad it happened, but I don't put any great stock or hope in that it's going to mean anything in the balance in the Senate. The fact is, under Mitch McConnell, the Republicans lost the Senate.
Yeah.
And the Republican Party is leaded with such an unpopular president. They've actually lost seats in the Senate to the Democrats. They've actually lost. Mitch McConnell's responsible and Donald Trump is responsible to pick someone like Oz. And as much as I like Herschel Walker personally, I like him personally, and he's a great athlete, but he was not the most fitting opponent for Warnock. They could have gotten somebody better. They could have gotten somebody better. They had somebody better in Ohio.
Yeah.
Mitch McConnell messed up. Ronan McDaniel messed up, and Donald Trump messed up. And he must assume responsibility for his share of the mess.
I mean,
but McConnell won't take responsibility. I doubt Donald Trump will. As much as I liked him as a president, he's not a good party leader. Most of the senatorial candidates he backed lost.
Yeah.
It's some real losers. It seemed like he was going for the culture of celebrity. Oh, we'll get somebody with a Heisman Trophy. Oh, we'll get a TV personality like Dr. Oz. That's going to make them more electable. He went for that stuff instead of for ability and ideology.
Yeah. They passed up on probably the better candidate they have in Pennsylvania. I forget her name, the lady that was in Pennsylvania. She was amazing. She was awesome.
Barnett.
Oh, Barnett.
Yeah, she should have been the nominee.
Oh,
she should have been. She's a young black woman. She should have been the nominee.
Just her testimony, of being, born, they were going to abort her. Her mom refused to do it. And she has a PhD. She's grown businesses, written books. She's a successful story. She has a family, and they still would not pick her. But anyway,
instead of her, he gets Oz.
Yeah.
A Turkish Muslim.
Unbelievable.
From another state.
Yeah. I guess it doesn't really matter to, Republican or Democrat anymore, but at least some Republicans still hold to certain ideologies and truth. But Jacob, the Biden administration just seems to pick, the Republicans pick certain people. The Biden administration picks, I guess, even worse. Sam Brinton, works for the Department of Energy, who confessed now to stealing women's luggage. This is Sam Brinton.
And he still has a job.
Yeah, he's been suspended. This is if you don't know, he's the kinky, they, them, whatever he likes to be called, officially charged, with airport luggage theft twice. This is twice. One's in Minneapolis, one's in Las Vegas. Man, this is, I don't know what to say except for, I guess he likes women's luggage. I don't know. But somebody in that capacity should have been let go of his position. But anyway, that's here in the States. But Germany, France, UK, all having trouble with violence at their border, meaning that you have illegal immigration coming in from Eritrea, from different Muslim countries, and they're just simply butchering and raping 14-year-old girl in France, in Germany, another French attack, on and on it goes. The UK, it just seems like an unending violence, and there's no politician seems to want to stop it.
Angela Merkel helped cause it.
And Rishi Sunak, no, not going to do anything about it. Germany's not going to do anything about it. Macron, not going to do anything about it. It's just
Sunak is
unwrapped.
not a conservative. He's a globalist.
Yes, absolutely. What about, we used to see this stuff in Latin America. Now it's in different parts of the world, but Latin America is going through some real changes here. I mean, we're going to have a whole different section on catching up for Latin America.
Yes.
Brazil is about to go under martial law, if not there already. Peru has just had a violent change of government just overnight. Of course, in Brazil, you had the election results that some say was stolen, and Bolsonaro is still appealing to the Supreme Court. But now military is involved. They shut down the country, basically. Now people are having to get 15 to 30 days worth of food just to get over, whatever martial law is going to be implemented. Jacob, you think Brazil is just heading down this road of violence and destruction because they just want to take down probably the most prosperous economy in South America? They seem to be not as left-wing, not as Marxist as other countries.
Most of the National Assembly are not left-wing. It was only the new Presidente who is.
Yeah.
And he is a favorite son, not only of China, but he's a favorite son of the Biden administration.
Oh, yeah. That tells you something, isn't it? That tells you something. Now they're involved in BRICS. I don't know what's going to happen now, and I don't know how that jeopardizes anything in their economy, but it's not looking good. I mean, we're talking martial law. We're talking an incredible amount of violence and military on the streets, shoot on sight. That's been their orders. So I know narco traffickers have been very happy that Bolsonaro lost. So I wonder if they're going to do anything in relation to more violence in Brazil.
Okay, the more instability there is in Brazil, the worse the economy is in China with the riots and so forth, the protests. And the worst the impact of the Ukraine is in Russia. And South Africa is a basket case anyway. Okay, the better it is for the dollar. It prevents the BRIC from becoming a viable competitor to the dollar and the euro. Okay,
that's interesting.
That is the upside.
Yeah.
The downside is obvious.
Yeah, global recession. Even BlackRock admitted today. It's unlike any other. He says it's BlackRock, the group. Recession it's inevitable. Depression could be. Central banks can't stop it. They said Federal Reserve can't stop it. It is something that, as you're trying to deal with inflation, you're going to cause major recession.
Yes,
Jacob. I mean, I would say they're one of the ones that caused all the problems. But now the ones coming out and say, "Well, it's not us; it's the Federal Reserve. It's not us; it's the central bank." The global economy, they said, has entered into a phase of volatility.
that's correct.
Not the U.S., not just the U.S., but the world economy.
Correct.
The global economy. Yeah. Unpack that a little more, Jacob. In light of China's, recent not only lockdowns but tremendous amount of protests and violence. In fact, even Apple is shifting product out. They're not going to make it in China. They're going to make it in Vietnam and India. But as China's production goes down, exports are going down, the economy of the world begins to shake.
Absolutely. You can't have the second, in a globalized economy, you can't have the second biggest economy going the way China's going without ramifications globally for other countries. That's absolutely for sure. But China never should have gotten this much leverage in the global sphere anyway. But it did. Now, in the power game, India will have a larger population than China. It's more English speaking. It's somewhat more democratic, although it certainly has its own problems, humongous ones, including ones that China doesn't have. But more scientists and engineers per capita than any other country, and border tensions with China. There have been at least 5 military conflicts between India and China since the end of the Second World War, or since China invaded Tibet, annexed Tibet. So China fears India as a potential long-term rival. This also casts a shadow over BRICS, for one thing. But going beyond that, Vietnam hates China. They hate China. They've never been friends. They stuck together against the Americans and Australians during the Vietnam War for their own interests, but they never liked each other. The Americans and Australians no sooner left Vietnam than China and Vietnam had a war. They don't like each other and they never will. But Vietnam is, again, another country that is a potential economic threat to Chinese dominance. China took it from Japan. Now it's being taken from China.
Yeah.
And there's nothing China can do to stop it.
No.
Not only that, it's happening at a time when the party is in danger. The party stayed in power because of the Confucianist mentality of the East.
Yeah.
In Confucianism, the people are willing to tolerate a lack of democracy, like they did in Singapore, as long as they're prospering. If the government brought about an economic environment where they were prospering, they didn't care too much about politics and freedom. They did, but not to the same degree as a Westerner would. And that's just Confucianism. Confucianism accepts a benevolent dictator, okay? Confucianism accepts a benevolent dictator philosophically. But now that the Chinese economy is no longer delivering those things, there's a problem. It's the shadow banking, it's the real estate, it's the debt, both government, public sector debt, and
huge.
But the company debt in China is double what it is in Western countries. Double.
Yeah.
Not just real estate. Double. They may have a handle on government debt and they may have a handle on private personal debt, but not on company debt. It's out of control. Okay. Yeah. On top of the shadow banking and on top of the real estate bubble. Okay. So it is now imploding. It is imploding. And the party needs to keep power. Understand the reasons for the lockdowns. We've said this before, these lockdowns. One, the amount of hospital beds and national health facilities in China would be inadequate. It would be overswamped, as it already was overswamped in Hong Kong, if the COVID spread to the degree it did in the West. That's the first problem. Second problem, problem that people are ignoring is, okay, China eclipsed Japan, but Japan is still the third biggest economy. The size of the deficits in Japan, the size of the national debt in Japan as a percentage of GNP is unbelievable. Unbelievable. Some people say it could be pushing 400%.
Oh, man. Yeah, no wonder. I mean, Japan has been in a perpetual stagnation for quite a number of years.
And both Japan and China have a demographic problem.
Yeah.
Immigration, howbeit much of it illegal, has protected the United States from the demographic time bomb. But it's not going to protect China or Japan.
No, they don't have. Yeah, they don't have
This
that.
idea of the Asian century and Asia is going to take over and it's going to be what the West used to be. That's not going to happen.
Definitely with their social credit score and system and their, of course, their dictatorship. But now, Jacob, they've been pushing CBDCs quite a bit for a long time. And it seems that CBDC may be a way out for these the WF, the banking, the IMF, in order to control and bring stability. They say stability to their debt problem. Now in Nigeria, just recently, Nigeria, $225 cash per week is all you could withdraw. Similar things have happened in other countries. You're seeing less and less cash available. Cash is not, by policy, you can't withdraw certain things. Australia is launching their new digital identity mobile app. Seems the world's going that way in terms of economy, identification, health record. What do you think, Jacob? I mean, how close are we heading down this road where you basically won't have cash, you will be tracked, you'll be surveillance, and all of your identity and information will be stored in some kind of cloud for you to show, you know, whoever forces are going to be asking you to show, and there'll be no more hiding from, especially those who are against the government. And that's the biggest part, isn't it? If you're against the government.
Yeah, but it goes one step beyond that. Nobody can buy or sell unless you take the number of the beast, the mark of the beast, number of his name. All of these things are heading for Revelation chapter 13 rapidly.
Very rapidly.
Very rapidly.
Yeah, we used to say, oh, it's coming, it's coming. We might say, well,
just think, first you went from precious metals. Then you go from precious metals to promissory notes, saying that the government has the gold in Fort Knox. Then Nixon defaults on the dollar. So now it's not based on gold, it's based on the promise of a corrupt government.
Yeah.
Then it goes from that into, and the reaction to that, of course, was Bitcoin and so forth.
Yeah.
And then it goes from that to digital currency, where it'll simply be electronically controlled by international agreement.
Yes.
It's with no relation to monetary mineral value or precious metals. Right. It'll just be electronic gold. You can see what it says in James, the gold will rust.
Yeah.
A non-corrosive metal. Metal will rust. I mean, it won't mean anything.
Yeah.
These people are telling you to buy gold, buy gold. Look what it says in James.
It won't be worth anything.
It won't be exchangeable.
Yeah. Jacob, this is definitely in the plans of the World Economic Forum, but recently another part of their agenda, which is the WHO, the World Health Organization, they just recently had a meeting. It ended on Wednesday for 3 days about the new pandemic treaty. You know, and most people consider it a blatant money grab, basically power and money.
That's all.
And they discussed certain things, but one of the things they discussed was China and the way China has handled the recent lockdowns. And that's a big thing, is it? I mean, are we going to see this type of lockdowns in the West?
We've already seen attempts at it, particularly in countries like Britain and Israel. We've already seen dry run attempts at it. Not to the degree in China, but certainly to a degree.
Yeah.
You know, don't forget, we had bank grabs, just government taking your money from the bank in Cyprus.
Yeah.
Once the precedent is set, once it happens somewhere, and they get
Yeah.
away with it.
And
It's going to
bail-in.
happen again.
Yeah, bail-ins, basically, the banks can take your
That's it.
retirement savings. Another thing that they discussed, Jacob, not at the WHO, but at the World Economic Forum level, was climate change lockdowns. This is a newer thing,
Yep.
not so new. If you've been watching Catching Up with Jacob, you heard us talk about it for the past couple of years, is the fact that once they've done the lockdowns, there's a precedent set. And
Yep.
next and it wasn't even our conclusions. They said it, it was so wonderful not to have people flying and driving and polluting the air. They said, why don't we have climate change lockdowns, where you basically can have people can monitor the amount of carbon in the air, and they can say, this city is too dangerous. This city has too many emissions. We have to shut them down. And now they have this concept of 15-minute cities, in which one of them, it's Oxfordshire County, in which they've agreed that everything will be available within 15-minute walk or a bike ride, but you shouldn't use your car. And if you do use your car to leave the county, we're going to have to track you, and you'll be given permission to come back into the county. This is next level dystopian ideas. 15-minute cities, and you need permission to drive your car. But this is climate lockdowns, and they're espousing it in different cities.
Yeah, and it'll always be places with low pollution, like Oxfordshire. It'll not be China where there's the most pollution. It's just complete hypocrisy, and it's not about the environment.
Yeah, 15-minute cities. I mean, it sounds like a nice idea, 15-minute walk, but what if you need to leave somewhere? Visit your family. Jacob, you travel a lot. You used to travel a lot more. 15-minute cities. I mean, Francis wants to do it. Paris, Barcelona, LA, Tokyo. And you're right.
Yeah.
Not all these cities
But they won't do it in Shanghai or Beijing.
Yeah, it's really about control. And the European Commission is very much in favor of this. So is in the UK as well. So it's climate lockdowns. I guess
NEOM is based on this as well.
Yeah.
NEOM
Based on it, yes.
is completely based on this 15-minute walk to get everything you need.
So these smart cities. Oh, look at that. And NEOM is just one of the cities that they want to build. It's not the only one, but it's going to be their flagship. These smart cities, I guess it goes back to what Google wanted to do for a long time, Jay, is they have these cities they call Google cities that they want to build, where you're going to have Wi-Fi everywhere you go, and everything will be uploaded to the cloud, and you won't need to carry IDs. And basically what they wanted is no laws, certain laws of that country wouldn't apply if you live in that city. So climate change lockdowns, all those things will be, I guess will be a given if you live in those cities. And but
no
you don't
human
have
rights.
Yeah, exactly.
Notice all of these things require the abrogation of democracy.
Yeah.
But secondly, what was feudal Europe like? Most people never traveled more than 25 miles from where they were born. A hyper-localization. Until the Crusades, most people never left the area they were born in.
Wow. Yeah, you're right. And I mean,
it's feudalism. They want feudalism. Of course, the privileged, of course, will be flying in executive jets.
It's a good time to let everybody know. Please send in your questions. We're on Rumble. Is that we're taking questions on Rumble, right, Jay? Okay.
Yes, sir.
And we will be asking Jacob questions after we're done with the topic. So start sending your questions in, and we're getting closer and closer to Backstage. So this topic is going to be, we're going to play a video regarding the Satan Club on Backstage, but we're going to talk about it here, and then we'll put the video on Backstage. But Jacob, you heard about this satanic club. They're rising up in different parts of the country. Here in the States, not sure how it is in other countries, but at least in the States, they want the freedom of religion to express that Satan is not a bad guy, and he's just a misunderstood man or being. And you'll be happy at their Satan's Club, not only in Virginia, California, this one in particular, Illinois. We put out Moriel put out a petition you can go on Moriel on Facebook and on the website, and you can sign the petition saying we don't want kids to be indoctrinated with Satan and his teachings, because it's being targeted to 5-year-olds, 5 to 12-year-olds. And boy, this, I mean, Jacob, but this is blatant. I mean, it's not even, you're not even hiding it in occult symbolism or anything like that. You're just simply saying it's Satan. He's misunderstood. He got in trouble because he asked questions. So he's a seeker of truth. He's a seeker of truth, and so there you have it.
According to spokesman for the Christian after-school Bible clubs, which likewise meet in schools after school hours, and they had to fight court cases to be able to do it, that the protests to stop the Satanists are going to create a condition where school boards will say, that's it, no more Bible clubs either. We can't discriminate. We're not going to have any more use of school properties for any religious purposes as a way to close down the Bible clubs. That is essentially what it's going to come to.
Incredible.
It's all the devil.
Yeah. I mean, the satanic clubs.
If you look at what these Satan clubs are telling kids, the devil's not real.
Yeah.
You know, Satan has always wanted people to believe he doesn't exist.
Yeah, that is greatest lie, isn't it? His greatest lie that there's no hell and that he doesn't exist. But you see it in media. You see it in Disney has blatant Satanism now. Little Demon, one of their shows. I wanted to ask Jay some of that because he's worked on films exposing the occult and things like that. But Jay, is it blatant now? I mean, is it just hands off, gloves off? We're going to tell you who we are and what we're doing, and people are not going to resist. They're going to embrace it.
There was, I want to say, pre-2000 kind of a veneer where they would hide it. But it seems as they've as society has disintegrated as far as morals, values, and faith, it's become the forefront. And now they don't hide it at all. They celebrate it. They celebrate the identity of being in rebellion.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, with you know, you have NBC, I believe, does a show called Lucifer, which is absolutely just over the top.
Can you imagine that? That one's like has one of the highest ratings. People just love that show. It's got 4 seasons or something like that.
A show called Lucifer?
Yeah.
Yep.
It's highly popular.
And what it does exactly what most Satanists want to do. They want to paint Satan as this, character that you can relate to, this one that is rebellious against authority. I mean, that's what they want. They want you to rebel against moral standards, parents, and authorities to the point where, you're basically saying Satan's a good guy. And
it's misunderstood.
Unfortunately, if you look at like with the track record of Disney since then, most of their shows, it incorporates some form of a parent not approving. Like I could go down the list. I'll start with Ratatouille. It's one of my personal Disney favorites.
Okay. All right.
The rat wants to cook, wants to hang out with humans. The father does not want that, does everything to dissuade him, but yet he rebels from his father's, basically his rules, and he is celebrated and becomes the star and becomes everybody's proud of him. The Little Mermaid rebels against her father, makes a deal with the devil, literally.
Yeah.
Goes and becomes celebrated and marries the prince. I mean, I could go on and on and on and on. It's all about questioning what God has put in place, or what has God put in place in the stories, and doing your own thing.
Yeah.
And with Marvel, it becomes even more egregious, because now what you have in Marvel is you have the celebration of mythological characters who are basically demigods.
Harry Potter is the same.
Yep.
With
so
the
this
snake, all that. Yeah.
Yep.
It's crazy. Jay, you worked on some of the stuff already with the films and other things, and especially with Good Fight Ministries and stuff like that. And they've done a great job in promoting, in exposing, I should say, promoting Christ, but exposing these things that are there. And it is really a war on Christians, because really, who's the only one that cares about what we teach our children in a sense of Christian morals and ethics and biblical doctrine would be Christians. So this is definitely a war on the culture, which has been a Christian culture, Christianized culture, I guess you could say. And now it's just simply going to be trampled under the feet of paganism, myths, Satanism. I mean, it's obvious. I mean, if anybody wants to think about that, we used to say, well, you remember the old record stuff, where people say, well, if you spin the records backwards, it's,
Backmasking.
Yeah. And you're making stuff up, all that stuff. Now it's like, no, they definitely say Lucifer, they definitely say Satan, but they changed the definition somewhat. And they said, well, he just got in trouble because he asked questions. See, boys and girls, you always need to ask questions, and don't be afraid to ask questions, and that's how it's being promoted now to our children and to in our schools now, and basically social media and movies, entertainment.
The occult is promoted, and any type of reference to God or theology is strongly opposed. And from everything is always magic, rather than a blessing, rather than a miracle. No, it's magic, and there's a price to be paid with using the occult always.
Yeah, that's right. In fact, that Disney show, Little Demon, I think it's the mom who gets impregnated by Satan, and
By
they
Lucifer.
have this, by Lucifer, they have this child, and that becomes a little demon. He doesn't know, or he or she, I forget if it's a girl or a boy, but doesn't know.
Girl.
It's a girl, yeah. And then meets Satan, and then he says, oh yeah, I'm your dad, and this is what you need to do. It's kind of like an antichrist figure, and he kind of gets to know like the real powers. And it's obvious because they see it right there. It's the symbolism is there, the pictogram and all that. So it is crazy. I don't even let my children watch anything like that, even closely related to that, or even closely related to Disney stuff, because it's gone crazy. It's gone into complete oblivion.
Well, also, like Jacob mentioned, if it was just Disney, it'd be one thing, but it's Universal, with the Harry Potter series, and you can go down the list. There's always some marketing of the occult in some fashion to specifically children.
Yeah,
and it's not even to adults. It's literally focusing in on children.
Yeah, it's by far the most egregious attack that as been alive for 40 some years. It's the most egregious attack on children, blatant attack on children. I'm sure Jacob can tell us more, but I think he's never seen anything quite like this. I mean, we're talking last week about it, week after week. I mean, we talked about the Balenciaga situation. That's gotten even worse now. It's like it's now not just media, but it's also clothing. It's also fashion. A lot of these fashion groups, these fashion brands are heavily involved in some kind of occulticism.
Yes. I think it's just pop culture and mainstream culture in general. Their agenda is focused towards moving away from traditional values in all aspects. And it goes along kind of with their agenda of pushing the LGBT agenda, on children. That's to say, you define who you are. It's not some person in the garden that gave you a specific role. It's you. It's that lie. Yeah,
absolutely. I think friends of mine that got involved in some kind of a cult was through the same thing. It was through media, it was through books, and there's been wonderful testimonies of believers that have come out and said, look, this is how I got involved, ex-Satanists, ex-people in Wicca, and they of course they're now believers in the gospel of Jesus Christ and promoting the gospel, and they're saying, look, this is definitely a blatant attack on our children. Keep them, teach them scripture, teach them Bible. And I think it's important for Christians to, really consider their entertainment now. and opt more for, I don't consider it a Christian entertainment necessarily something good all the time, but something that is good, something that is godly, something that is noteworthy, something that is praiseworthy, says Philippians 4. Meditate on these things. So there's scripture, Bible stories, Bible reading, teaching them apologetics, how to defend the faith and how to know that your faith is true and real. I think we have to spend more time on that with our children than just allowing them free reign, with whatever it's on the media, because a lot of it is just heavily influenced by a cult, if not outright Satanists.
Yeah.
It's promoted there. So quite a
I
bit of
once
things.
heard a pastor say, and it was talking kind of along these lines. He said, we do not, in the Bible says we do not wrestle with flesh, but spirits and powers of the air.
That's right.
So he was like, I want you to really focus on that phrase, princes and powers of the air. Who rules the air? That would be the prince of darkness.
Yeah, Satan for sure.
And what is being put into the air? What is on air, as far as TV, as far as media? What is being put on air? And
right.
it's always a love story with him.
Yeah, that is true. It's somehow manipulated into believing that Satan is not a bad guy, and the denial of that he exists. Jacob was right. By the way, if you don't see Jacob on, it's just Jay and myself. He's having computer problems, so he'll be back in just a few minutes. So we're not just killing time, but we're waiting for Jacob to get to the questions. But we are discussing something that's very important, which is really the indoctrination of children in our society, how to raise godly children in a godless world. And obviously, if you're a parent, or if you're a grandparent, or if you're a young person yourself, let us know. Put that on the chats, put that on the questions, and we'll get to ask Jacob these questions. But if you have any insight and thought regarding what we're talking about, it'd be great to hear, because obviously people have lived through some of this. Some of them have a great testimony, and we talked about that. Great testimony. They came out of that lifestyle. They were promoted by their parents or someone in their family, and the Lord got him out of there. The Lord got him out of there, and it's a heavy thing, because it is a spiritual battle. It is no joke. It is a very, very heavy spiritual battle, and I think Jacob's got a good study on Ephesians 6, the armor of God, that we have to put on maybe next week. We have to put on.
Sure.
That would be really good for people to know the spiritual warfare, Ephesians 6. And one thing for sure is, we talked about the war on Christianity, but look at this story. In the UK, a prosecutor called the Bible passage no longer appropriate for modern society. Now, there's a whole backstory to this, and I'll try to be succinct in this. It was a street preacher. His name is John Donne. I think Jacob's heard of him in the UK, and he's a street preacher, and he preached the gospel. He preaches the gospel, and he mentioned to a couple that was walking down the street side by side, hand to hand, says, "Are you guys sisters?" He asked the question, and he says, "No, we're not. We're in a same-sex relationship." And he went on to quote 1 Corinthians chapter 6, which is, "Those who practice such things will not inherit the kingdom of God." This is a well-known passage, and one that we use, to show that what God thinks of homosexuality in Scripture is sinful. That practice of it is sinful. So these two women basically pressed charges against him. And the cops came and they arrested the Christian preacher under the, I guess you could say, he was violating the peace. He was shouting, he was screaming, they said, and he was quoting this abusive and threatening language to these women, which wasn't even true. He just asked the question and basically told them what the scripture said. But the Crown, the Crown Prosecution Service, which is CPS, basically we're going to try him for disturbing the peace and hate crimes, hate speech. And they were able to drop the charges because I guess the women never showed up to testify. But one of the things that CPS said, the Crown Prosecution Service said, which was probably the most indicative of all this, that the Bible is offensive and it contains illegal speech, which should not be shared in public. And this is, at the end of the day, they said that this 1 Corinthians 6, it is no longer appropriate in modern society. Wow.
I mean, this is crazy. This is a crazy clown world we live in, where the Bible is offensive, but a gay pride parade with half-naked men walking down the street, that's perfectly acceptable and normal.
Yeah.
I mean, what world do we live on?
I guess we can jump right into the questions. We got a few minutes with Jacob. Let's jump
Go
right
ahead,
into
let's do it.
Let's do it. Davey, you got the questions? Or
Make
who's
sure to
gonna-
get that first question from
Yeah, let's
believe
do
it-
that.
Adams.
Thank you, brother. Thank you so much. Let's do that. Jacob, this comes from a pastor in Florida who wanted to
Yes.
ask you this question. The question is the beast out of the sea in Revelation 13 looking back at a single shot of all the four beasts of Daniel 7, or is it just looking at the fourth beast of Daniel 7 with simply the characteristics of the previous three?
Okay,
Basically,
what's most important to understand is it is not the second statue or beast in Daniel that's most important. It's Daniel chapter 2, because that is where the image was worshipped. It is the worship of Nebuchadnezzar's image in chapter 2 that is most important, and it's a singular image. Additionally, the dimensions of the image in Aramaic are play on 666 in the second chapter of Daniel. So that is what prefigures Revelation 13 more than the others. Now, the others do come into play. There is a correspondence, but it is primarily it's something singular. Now, what we also know is the four empires will have concurrent existence. For instance, Peter calls Rome Babylon. The mystery religions of Babylon existed in Rome. Okay, they found their way through Pergamum in Asia Minor into Rome. Okay, the Persian Empire existed in the first century. It was still there. They held off the Romans for 300 years. This was more important than the first century before Christ, but it was there. The Persian Empire was there. It was then called Parthia. And you see Jews coming from Parthia in the book of Acts, chapter 2, on Pentecost. So Parthia was there, that was Persia. And then, of course, the Roman Empire was not Roman, it was Greco-Roman. It was specifically Greco-Roman. So they were concurrent. I'm down to 1% battery now. I'm going to be dropping dead at any second.
okay, no worries. Just finish your thought, Jacob.
So essentially, we need to look at Revelation 13. You can't separate the Antichrist from his image. His image reveals about him. And the Old Testament picture of his image is Daniel 2.
Okay, very good.
Okay.
Very, very good. Maybe we'll get one question in. Jacob, do you see the CBDC control all the banking by 2025?
I couldn't set a date, but it's heading that direction.
Is there any similarities between the last 7 years of human history before Jesus comes and the 7 years of the Midianite enslavement of Israel before Gideon came?
Yes, typologically, yes.
Okay. When will there be an alternative to PayPal to support the ministry of India? We have dropped PayPal due to its policies. I guess that's a question for David Lister.
Yes, of course, for David Lister, but we are aware of the problem.
Yes, we're aware Jacob's working on it diligently. We are going to have something, an alternative to that. In both Old and New Testament, many people had their names changed. Is it possible that a mid-trib, that the Antichrist person will have their names changed by Satan and the false prophet with the new name beginning with the name being 666?
That could be theoretically possible, because Antiochus Epiphanes his name was Antiochus Epiphanes, but he was Antiochus IV. So
right.
We deal with this a bit in the book Shadows of the Beast. We deal with it a bit in the books of Shadows of the Beast, where these villains have more than one name.
Yes,
okay?
Yes. Get a hold of that book. Absolutely. Jacob Peter says the verse, the meek shall inherit the earth, means becoming capable of being dangerous and then learn self-control around that. Is this any sense accurate?
Meek is knowing how and when to use power.
Yes,
It is not using power simply because you have it.
got it. Got it. Okay. So learning self-control. Is this
Yes.
accurate? Okay, very good.
The-
Jacob, now that the BRICS dropped the US dollar as a standard, we owe China unbelievable amount. Will this default our loans?
Don't forget, China has such debt of its own, and these things are so integrated. It is not just even if China did that, it wouldn't help China long term.
Got it.
Could you repeat the question?
Yes. Now the BRICS has dropped the dollar as a standard. We owe China unbelievable amount of money. Will this default our loan?
No, that would not affect the loan. No.
Okay.
If they went to a different, the currency would still have to be repayable in dollars, so it wouldn't.
Okay. Jacob, believers sold their belongings in Acts. Can you expand on how to foreshadow plays out again, maybe in the near future? Oh, and we lost Jacob now. Okay. Well, that's all right. We knew that we had a little bit of time. So we're actually going to save those two questions for next week. We're going to save those two questions because they're good questions. By the way, thank you so much, especially the one about the image and actually the pastor that sent in that question was very good. All the questions are excellent. The more biblical ones and actually the ones, they're all biblical, but the ones that refer to scripture and the ones that refer to the events going on in the world. I wanted to do something a little bit different. We're going to cut it short today because of Jacob's not with us, but I did want to play for those who are still on and those who are still with us. We're not going to have necessarily backstage, but maybe we should have a backstage with this video. What do you think, Jay?
I think we should quickly go to backstage, which
Okay.
I will facilitate that.
Let's do that.
And then we'll play that and we'll call it a day.
Yeah. All kinds of stuff. Please pray for Jacob. I mean, he's about to put that computer to rest at some point or another. And it's I don't think that computer is going to be on tomorrow. So he's going to have to get a new one. So please pray for Jacob and get him back on for tomorrow and obviously next week. So let's do that, Jay. Let's jump over to backstage.
Real quickly, I just would like to make a correction. I am not above making mistakes. The pastor was not in Florida, but actually in London, in England. So in fact, let me go ahead and correct it correctly.
Yeah.
He's in England on Stoke-on-Trent.
Stoke-on-Trent. I know where that is. Yeah.
Well.
So okay. Thank you for sending that question. For the pastor sent that question, and we love it. We love it when everyone participates, asks questions, sends comments in. So if there's any interesting comments, we want you to, you want us to read, we definitely would read it. And not only the questions, but the comments, I think, are important because there's so. I mean, I got to tell you, Jay, there's with Moriel and CCOD and many other people that watch, there's been some wonderful believers that have great insight in Scripture, and I have actually learned from even the comments that they made because they asked a question or made a comment and it made me go back to Scripture, look at it and read it and go, wow, it's right there. So
absolutely,
we're not the Pope, we're not infallible. We can learn, we can still apply Scripture to our lives, and especially comes from other believers. And so we appreciate those who watch and send their comments and questions. And unfortunately, Jacob couldn't. He loves to be on for backstage. It's like one of his favorite parts and questions. His computer just died. So we're gonna, we're gonna have to say good night to Jacob, get to bed early, and we're gonna switch over to backstage. So get to backstage, right, Jay? Where are we at? Where are we gonna be in backstage?
We're gonna be Rumble, and we're gonna be Vimeo, and of course Moriel.tv.
Get to Moriel.tv and Rumble and Telegram.
Telegram as well.
Yeah, and Vimeo. And so jump over from YouTube and Facebook. Because some of those things we can't talk about. We're going to play a video pretty soon that, boy, they went through a lot of work to get that video done. I mean, I got to tell you, a long video for what they were doing. And we want to talk about that and make sure people understand what they're up against, because this was literally promoted for children. And want to make sure that we get that on. People to watch because it's egregious. I mean, and I don't know, should we play that New Zealand? I think the New Zealand ones, we should play that one too.
We should play that one too.
Yeah. I think that's the right thing to do. Yeah. I would like to do that.
right. I'll switch us to Backstage.